We've also got some big news this morning we've been talking about that should not be flying under your radar. The Trump administration is now pushing for the entire Affordable Care Act to be thrown out, and that is triggering some new reaction from Democrats over on the Hill. Here's Speaker Pelosi just moments ago.
The Republicans did say during the campaign that they weren't there to undermine the pre-existing condition benefit, and here they are right now saying they're going to strip the whole Affordable Care Act.
So here's the deal. The Justice Department is asking the courts to strike down not just parts of the law, like the individual mandate, for example, but the whole thing, according to the Post. If the administration gets its way, millions of people might lose their health care coverage, and this would basically upend huge parts of our health care system. Yes, President Trump and Republicans have been promising to repeal and replace the law for years. Thing is, there's no real replacement, and new 2019 enrollment numbers this week showed a total of 11.4 million Americans signed up for coverage this year. Joining me now from Capitol Hill, Republican Senator Mike Braun from Indiana, who sits on the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee. Senator, thank you very much for coming back on the show.
Good to be on.
A lot to get to with you this morning, so let me blast through some of this, and let me start, of course, with this Affordable Care Act news. Do you support the Trump administration's position here?
So I was clear during the campaign. It was a big issue, the number one issue in Indiana. You've got to cover pre-existing conditions and no cap on coverage. And I thought it was dangerous territory when we were trying to relitigate that. I really believe that that's a ship that's sailed, and we ought to be focusing on how we're going to lower costs while maintaining those two pillars. Because when I put my own plan into place for my employees 10 years ago, covered pre-existing conditions and no cap on coverage. And I think other Republicans need to start focusing on how we lower costs, get over the fact that you got to do that stuff.
So, Senator, if I'm hearing you correctly, and I want to be clear here, it sounds like what you're saying is you are not totally behind this movement now by the Trump administration. Is that correct?
Well, I think it's mostly a question of repeal and replace. I would have never talked about repealing until I had a strong replacement for it. And all I can tell you is that both sides of the aisle need to be interested on lowering the costs, and it's got to be based upon covering pre-existing conditions and no cap on coverage. No one should go broke because they get critically ill or have a bad accident. And we as conservatives need to take on the healthcare industry, challenge them to fix the system, or either they'll have one partner, the federal government.
Your colleague, Senator Pat Toomey, was actually talking about something very similar this morning, and I want to play for you what he had to say. Listen to this.
It's absolutely the case that health care was a big issue in the last election, and I do believe it didn't work well for Republicans. I don't think that's because we've opposed Obamacare. I think it's because many Republicans didn't have a good answer to how you're going to deal with the very real problem of people with pre-existing health problems.
Is Senator Toomey right, Senator Braun?
He's 100% right, and I agree with him. And there are more Republicans that know that. And the big issue has been that I think we've been an apologist for the healthcare industry over time, and we've got to help the industry fix itself. And he was right on. I had not heard that until now. I preached it all along the campaign trail.
I want to ask you about another issue that's important to you on drug prices, but very quickly, given your position here, given what you're sharing with us here, will you personally put pressure on the White House, on President Trump, to change their thinking on this, to perhaps reverse course? Is that something you would do?
I'll have to look at what's going to come along with this whole idea of repeal. If it's with a plan that does some of the things that Senator Toomey and I and others are interested in, it would have to be part and parcel of it. If it's just for a flat repeal with no solutions, including saying that you're going to cover pre-existing conditions and no cap on coverage, there'll be some space between me and the administration.
Okay. Let me ask you about drug pricing, because Politico Playbook this morning says that the White House has been quietly having early stage staff level conversations with Speaker Pelosi's staff about drug pricing legislation, according to sources in both camps. So I'll ask you, what can you tell us? And I know this is an issue that's important to you, about conversations that you are having with Democrats or the White House, or that are being had on Capitol Hill on this.
Well, I'm the one that authored the bill to get rid of the PBM rebates, passing on directly to pharmacies and individuals. I'm glad that that is a glimmer of hope for some bipartisanship. And when I've crossed the aisle,
These talks are happening?
I hope they are. I don't know for sure, but if they are, I'm going to be for it because we need to start moving in that direction to fix the system, lowering costs, and both sides talking about it.
Let me ask you about something else that is going down and has been going down. The idea, of course, of this Mueller report. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, as you know, has blocked that resolution that was sent over from the House calling to make Robert Mueller's full report public. Let me ask you, do you think the Senate should vote on this?
You know, I don't know. I think that for me, I've been out there. I'd like to see as much transparency on it as possible. Even the president said, publish a whole report. Whether he was doing that because he knew it may not happen, because there are guidelines that AG Barr has got to adhere to when it comes to classified information and ongoing investigations. But I've always been a believer, whether it's in that kind of issue or health care, full transparency so you can see what's going on.
Senator Mike Braun, I appreciate you coming back on the show. We'd love to have you on again soon.